Hey everyone, I'm Ash, and you're listening to the Avenue podcast. In this series, we're diving into God's heart for justice. Through these conversations, we hope God's call to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly becomes a lived reality in your life.
How's it going, Matt?
It's going well. How are you going, Nathan?
I'm good. It's been a while since we've done a podcast together.
Yep.
But I think counting, this is our third? No,
Yeah.
fourth. I think it's our fourth.
Fourth. Yeah.
Can you remember all four?
I can only remember three for some reason.
Ooh. Okay, which ones do you remember?
We did one about worship, Jesus flipping over the tables.
Yep, that was our first one, right?
The first one. And
Yep.
then we did the worship series.
Mm-hmm.
The story series where we talked about worship.
Yep.
And then
This one. There was one more we did. I forgot what it was about, but we recorded it at Mont Albert Church. I remember I just got off the flight from Gold Coast or something, and then the day after I was in Mont Albert.
And we had to sneak into Mont Albert Church
did,
because there were people in there.
Yeah.
And we had to record it. So we just
It was
went
stealthy.
in. No one knew we were there.
stealthy.
We were recording a podcast while the Quakers,
For real.
who traditionally have a very quiet service, were
Guys,
listening
I think
through.
we're the first people in the world to have recorded a podcast whilst the Quakers service is going in the same building.
That
Surely. It has to be.
World
Has to
record.
be.
Can we get
World
a Guinness World Records check on this, please?
Oh, that's good. That's good. What are we talking about today, Matt?
Today we're going to be talking about praise and protest.
Ooh, praise and protest. That's a familiar phrase to me and to you.
Yeah?
Why is that a familiar phrase to us?
Yeah, well, a couple of years ago, I think 2023 or
Yep.
2022.
I think it's 2023. No?
Mm.
Yeah, 2023.
One of 2022 or 2023, one of them. We did a worship night where we raised money for loneliness in Melbourne was kind of the thing we were protesting against, and we wanted to really praise God but simultaneously ask God to intercede and to help the people of Melbourne feel less lonely. And obviously a lot of mental health stuff has come out after the COVID lockdowns, and we wanted to be making people aware of this issue, but also bringing it to God. And I think that was really a powerful night.
Yeah, it was very much like not your traditional charity sort of thing. It was more, hey, let's just try see what God puts in everyone's hearts in order to give. Like, we weren't selling anything for money to be raised. It was just like, we're going to praise, we're going to worship, we're going to lead in song. We'll brief you about what the cause is, but it's on your heart to sort of give. And that was one of my favorite nights for worship, to be honest. It was awesome.
Yeah.
We should definitely do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the plan.
That's the plan.
So we're talking about praise and protest today, looking specifically at a part of the Bible, Amos 5 verse 21 to 24.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm happy to read it.
Yeah.
If
sounds
that's
great.
all good. So I'm reading from the NLT version. Amos 5 verses 21 to 24. It goes, I hate your show and pretense, the hypocrisy of your religious festivals and solemn assemblies. I will not accept your burnt offerings and grain offerings. I won't even notice all your choice peace offerings. Away with your noisy hymns of praise. I will not listen to the music of your harps. Instead, I want to see a mighty flood of justice and an endless river of righteous living. Yeah, Matt, this is a pretty confronting passage. Starts with a very strong word.
Yeah.
Hate.
Yeah.
That's a banned word.
Yeah. That's a pretty crazy word
Yeah.
to start with.
I know.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to imagine God and hate, in the same sort of sentence. Yeah. What's your take on this passage? What do you know about it beforehand as well?
Yeah. So this is in Amos, and Amos is one of the minor prophets in the Old Testament.
Yep.
But he is basically telling Israel, you've messed up. You have taken this beautiful thing that God has given you, and you have turned it on its head. You have, taken his mercy and everything that he's done for you for granted.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And Amos as a prophet is not simply just I feel like prophets get the stigma of just telling the future, but Amos is a classic minor prophet example in the sense that he has a major message, you know? It's like a minor prophet with a major message.
Oh, I like that.
You like that? Yeah.
Bit of playing words,
a bit of playing words, a bit of musical theory involved as well, you know? So, yeah.
I mean, but his message is pretty sad
It
as
is.
well. So
it does hit a minor chord.
It's a minor chord, yeah.
An A minor chord. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Well, tell me more about Amos. Is there like a structure to the book for it? What do you reckon?
Yeah. So this Amos is actually set out as a chiasm, and this passage is actually a chiasm in itself. A little bit before this verses that we've read out, and a little bit after. But yeah, the way that this passage is structured is it talks about exile. So in that day, you will be like a man who runs from a lion only to meet a bear. And talking about this thing that, you know, the people of Israel are going to be chased. They're going to be like exiled out of their land. And then the second part of that is I spurn your feasts. So he's talking about their ceremonies. And then the main part, so the pinnacle of the chiasm, so it goes A, B, and then the pinnacle, C, is let justice flow like water and goodness like an unfailing stream. And then on the way back down, it goes, did you bring me sacrifices and offerings for 40 years in the desert? No, you didn't. So it's talking about those ceremonies again. Yeah. And then that last part, for I will exile you beyond Damascus. So it's driving home that point of exile if they don't change. So yeah, it's a really interesting structure. It's like 1, 2, 3, 2, 1 in that order, like a triangle.
Yes, I can imagine it. I can visualize the sort of sideways pyramid looking thing. Yeah. No, that's really good. I always find it like so insightful, like how, I don't know, like God delivers a message in this way and the author writes it in this way. And I think it does like subconsciously play a huge role into like what we emphasize.
Yeah.
And I think it's no like coincidence that this verse is probably the most mentioned one in Amos as well.
Yeah. And I think what's really interesting is that like, I mean, you read this passage and you're like, oh yeah, that's pretty depressing. Like it feels quite sad, as I was saying, you know, but that pinnacle verse, let justice flow like water and goodness like an unfailing stream. Like that is powerful.
Yeah. And
that is the power of God.
I love that image of justice flowing like a river, and also the contrast beforehand with, in verse 23, it says, I will not listen to the music of your harps. Instead, I want to see a mighty flood of justice. I think in the NIV version, it says, I want to see justice, roll like a river. I like that contrast from a visual perspective, because I think of harps to be like a very flowy sort of instrument. It's like a rolling sort of feel to it. Yep. And it's almost contrasted with that verse 24. It's like, let justice roll like a river. Yeah. In that same way, like, don't roll your music in that way, but roll justice out. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. Our praise is not meant to be this show. It's meant to be justice enacted on earth. And I think that is the key part of this passage. Yeah.
How do you sort of reconcile the idea about religious festivals and what it talks about with that in our modern day context as like worship leaders in church, in our context, maybe like intersection, prayer and praise, that sort of thing?
Yeah. I think that like it's really tempting to be that church who has like the best music and really strives for the best equipment, spends all the money on looking pretty, trying to reach as many people as possible, trying to have the best social media platform. But, as we talked about in another podcast earlier this year, worship is not about like just the song. It's not just about putting a hand up in worship. It's just as much about putting a hand down to those in need. And when we focus on all that stuff, it can really easily pull us away. We focus on the ceremonies and the church music that we have today. We lose sight of, that hand down for the needy.
Yeah, it brings me back to the song that we always sing, Heart of Worship, by Matt Redman. And particularly the line in the verse that says, "I'll bring you more than a song."
Yeah.
For a song in itself is not what you require.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty powerful because also ironic because it's in a song.
Yeah.
You know, I'll bring you more than a song.
Yeah.
It's in a song. But it's almost stripping back and saying that this song doesn't even matter. Like the song that Matt Redman wrote, it doesn't matter. It's about the heart behind how we worship.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's just such a good reminder. And I feel like it encapsulates this really well that, praise is so much more than just music or good sounding. Like you can get anything that sounds good in your ears and it doesn't have to be praise, you know?
Yeah.
Think like secular music or other music genres and other nice sounding things doesn't equal like praise.
Yeah. And what I love as well is that this is not an isolated incident of this message. I think that this message is like repeated heaps of times throughout the Bible. I'm going to bring up a few examples. For example, Jesus says, if you are presenting sacrifice at the altar in the temple and you suddenly remember that someone has something against you, leave your sacrifice there at the altar, go and be reconciled to that person, then come and offer your sacrifice to God. Like that is like, instead of like going to the temple with your sacrifice, if you've got beef with someone, go figure that out first. Like, you know, another one is you do not delight in sacrifice or I'd bring it. You do not take pleasure in burnt offerings. That's from Psalms. And, you know, the psalmist David wrote all these psalms about, you know, and songs about praising God. But yeah, he notices here that he doesn't delight in sacrifice or burnt offerings or ceremonies.
Yeah.
And then the last one I had was the poor widow who gives all that she has in Mark. She comes to the temple and gives, you know, a very small amount compared to what, you know, a religious leader might give, but it's literally all the money that she has. And it's that heart behind it, that this is like everything that I have in my life and I'm giving it to God.
That's really powerful. Yeah. And I'll even add to that. I came across Isaiah 58, which talks about fasting as well. And I'll just read it out from verse 3. It says, "We have fasted before you," they say. "Why aren't you impressed? We have been very hard on ourselves and you don't even notice it." "I will tell you why," I responded. "It's because you are fasting to please yourselves. Even while you fast, you keep oppressing your workers. What good is fasting when you keep on fighting and quarreling? This kind of fasting will never get you anywhere with me. You humble yourself by going through the motions of penance, bowing your heads like reeds bending in the wind. You dress in burlap and cover yourselves with ashes. Is this what you call fasting? Do you really think this will please the Lord? No, this is the kind of fasting I want. Free those who are wrongly imprisoned. Lighten the burden of those who work for you. Let the oppressed go free and remove the chains that bind people. Share your food with the hungry and give shelter to the homeless. Give clothes to those who need them and do not hide from relatives who need your help." Yeah, I found that like coupled with all the ones that you mentioned about Jesus and the element of justice and authentic praise being so relevant to this verse as well. My favorite verse, my favorite part in this one is talking about how we are like reeds bending in the wind. If we don't, like, you think of something that's just flowing in the wind, it just goes with the flow, no backbone. That's what empty praise looks like. It's no substance to it. It doesn't have a mind of its. It doesn't have, a backbone towards it. It's like just this bendy thing that just goes with the flow and is impacted by culture and the world.
I think that it would be really easy to look at this passage from like an outsider's perspective and be like, oh, so there's no point in, you know, singing songs or like in church. Like people believe that, like that, you know, that it's a useless thing. But there is biblical evidence that it's good to sing songs. Like Psalm 100 talks about, make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all you lands, serve the Lord with gladness, come before his presence with singing. Like that's pretty explicitly like come before him with song. Enter into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise. Be thankful unto him and bless his name. I think that that's pretty evident that we need that it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But there is definitely a difference between this joyful noise that is talked about here and that religiosity of performance for performance
Empty,
sake.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I do agree. Like, I think some people tend to sort of just stray away from, like, go the other side of the spectrum that,
Yeah.
like, let's just stay away from trying to worship authentically, even because, like, we don't want to false worship.
Yeah.
And I don't know. My prayer is that, like, God sort of sees our heart in the way that we worship, and it's very hard to purify a heart. I agree, but like, I feel like if God sees that we are trying to purify our heart and give him that authentic praise, I feel like that's enough for him, you know?
I agree, yeah.
And that gives me reason to sing.
Yeah, and I think that inherently, like we're talking about praise and protest, like praising God is like a selfless thing to do. Like it should be a selfless thing to do, and it is if we do it with selfless intent, I think.
Yeah.
Like, if you think about just giving your time to someone is selfless, we're giving that time to God and we're, putting him above ourselves. Like a lot of worship is saying, God, you are great. You are like high above us. Like you are our king,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do understand that not very rarely, but it is hard to kind of authentically just claim that without the tarnish of like our own sin and our own humanity towards it as well.
Yeah.
And this, I feel like when we do worship, there is magnitude beyond what we're actually comprehending when we're singing. And I think maybe that's something to think about when we praise from in the future and as we sing songs and understanding what we're actually saying when we're singing as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's really important. And it's interesting, like after these verses, it talks about how, like in the next couple of verses, it talks about how Israel was actually unfaithful to God in the desert for 40 years. Like it talks about how they went to idols. I can't remember the names of the specific idols that it mentions, but they go to idolization. And I think that it's kind of empty to then go back to God with the same mindset. I think like they'd always come back to God, but it's not truly coming back to him. Like it's not a full repentance because they haven't acknowledged that they were wrong. I think that it's not connected to justice. Like it's just, I think it was always self-preservation. Like they would idolize these idols because they want like something out of it, right? And I think that pure worship is not selfish. I think it's not self-preserving. It's about God alone. And I think that pure worship in itself is a form of protest because you're going against the human nature part of us that tries to make it about us.
It's uplifting something else ahead of yourself, and that's what true protest is about. And I also think Jesus is like the perfect example of that as well. Like beyond, this is Amos, but talk about the Gospels and what Jesus did, like in the Good Samaritan, I think it's Luke 10. Jesus shows the perfect example of justice. Very contextual as well to today's culture. We have a good Samaritan helping a Jew, a beaten up Jew. I feel like that's like in today's culture that would probably we don't really see this word associated, but that's like anti-racism happening right there. Right, standing up against racism, standing it up against the person of probably your opposite skin color, opposite descent. I think that is purely Jesus, like showing, and Jesus doesn't even just talk this talk. He really like walks it through the way that he tells these stories and through the way that he helps people. He identifies even with the Samaritan here, saying, "I am the Good Samaritan" as well, and he is associating with the other, other side. And I think that's the pure amount of justice that Jesus shows.
And I think we want to see more justice, right? Like something that a lot of people in society want, but how do we get there, I guess.
Yeah, how do we get there? I don't know. It's really, it is challenging. Because I've been wrestling with the concept of God's justice as being something that I will never fully comprehend.
Yeah.
Because what I think is fair is probably not exactly what God thinks is fair.
Yeah.
And that's something hard for me to wrestle with, because I do want to grow closer to God's justice. But some things in the Bible are really hard to reconcile with sometimes.
Yeah.
For example, why does it look like slavery happens in the Bible sometimes? Why does it look like, innocent people are dying sometimes that weren't Israelites in the Old Testament? And that's like sort of hard to like see, God, where is your justice with all that? But I think when you start to think about the rhythms of grace that God shows and through his character, I think you understand his justice being so much more, so much more nuanced than what we think is like kind of black and white.
Yeah.
There is so much, expression towards it.
Yeah.
And the perfect example is to look at Jesus and the way that he exemplified justice, and hoping that we can mimic that.
Yeah.
What about you? What do you reckon about how we can sort of grow closer to God's justice?
Yeah. Like definitely a step towards it is commitment to Jesus. Like I think that it is like when we commit to Jesus and when we choose to live like him, when we give ourselves to him and say, let us be your hands and feet, I think that we start to become more like him. And I think Jesus, as you said, was the prime example of justice on earth. So I think that if we want justice, let's try and be like Jesus. And I know it's like cliche to say, like, what would Jesus do? But it really is what we as Christians need to be. Like that is the example of how to live. That is,
no, for sure. I think, because justice is so intertwined with truth, and truth is not things. Truth is a person. Yeah. So let's be that person. Let's try and mimic that person. Yeah. And that's where justice will come from. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, it's about drawing closer to that. And that can happen through our authentic praise and protest.
Yeah. And I think the way that we sort of reconcile things as humans is that we look at morality through theories and through ideals and through concepts that we sort of manifest ourselves and through what we feel like is right. But just like looking back at Jesus saying he is above everything that we'll ever know. And the best we can do is just try to be more like him.
Yeah. You become what you worship.
Yep. Yeah.
And if we want to become something that's not of God, then we worship other things. So when we spend time doing things that aren't worshiping God, we are more likely to become more like that thing. I think.
Yeah, for sure. And that makes me leads me to think protest is a natural response to praise. Yeah. When you praise, you naturally are protesting because you live from this place of overflow where you're praising and you're being filled and inspired to actually be protesting and being, like justice people, and justice filled people who are more like Jesus.
Yeah. So let's worship God and become more like him. I think that's the main point.
Yeah. Worship leads to justice.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us today on the Avenue podcast. It's been nice to chat about this. Yeah. Always good doing a podcast with you, Matt.
Yeah. Same. Likewise.
Yeah.
Yeah. We really enjoyed our time. I hope you did too. Join us next week as
we keep going through the Justice series, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That's us.
Love you guys.
Thanks for listening to the Avenue podcast and our series on justice. We believe conversations about faith, life, and the scriptures help us to walk in our God-given potential. My name is Gracie, and if you want to learn more about our community and get in touch with us, you can connect with us through the handle @Avenue Mission on social media platforms.
Yeah, walking down the street, walking with my feet, feeling real great, feeling real neat. Cause I've got my friend Jesus, he's the best. I got my friend Jesus, chuck out the rest. Got my friend Jesus, heck yeah. Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah.